Hey there, it's Amanda Guarneri here from the Resume RX, and I've been a nurse practitioner since 2011, and this is my space to help you navigate the professional and career side of things so that you can land and find a dream career that leaves you both professionally and personally fulfilled. That is my wish for myself and for all of you. Today, we're going to talk about some of my best interview tips for nurse practitioners. The interview process can be a little bit different than the process of interviewing as a nurse. So if this is a new experience for you, or if you just need a little bit of a refresher as you are moving to a new NP role, stick around so that I can teach you my best tricks and tips of the trade. So before you go into your interview, maybe the day or two before, there are a couple things that you should be doing in advance. And the first thing is doing some research. I want you to do some research about where you are interviewing. Hopefully this is something that you've already looked up maybe before you even applied. But if you're getting this interview and it's not a place that you've really explored, you want to do some research ahead of time. So you want to research the clinic or the hospital, their mission statement, the types of patients they see, their target demographic, their values, anything that you can find online. Just Google the heck out of them so that you have a good understanding of the basic information so that when you're there for the interview, you're not asking things that very easily could have been Googled and found online before you showed up. This will show that you have a vested interest in them as an organization, and it'll also leave time for you to ask more valuable questions and echo to them the things that you already know. It can go a long way by acknowledging something that you have researched ahead of time and then asking a deeper, more significant question to help you learn more about the organization as a whole. Something I want you to remember is that when you are interviewing, this is as much an interview of them, like you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. So while they will have a lot of questions for you about why you're a great candidate for them, keep in mind that you should be interviewing them as well, because you want to have the mindset that you will have your choice of positions and that you're going to choose the best option for you. And if you're strategic about your job search and your strategies, hopefully that will be the case. There are definitely some questions that come up time and time again in all interviews, especially nurse practitioner interviews, with the first one being, tell me about yourself. I recently had an interview for a new role that I have accepted, and I met with no fewer than 4 people, and each of those 4 people started with the same question. So this is a question that I would say to plan ahead of time. Know what you're going to say in response to this question. Showcase your value, your talents, your interests, your passions professionally. Don't get into too much personal information when they say to tell you about themselves, because they really want to know about you, as a nurse practitioner and as a healthcare provider and as just kind of a general human. So that is a question that I would think about ahead of time, maybe practice in the mirror so that you are not caught off guard when they just give you the floor to open and not answer a specific question, but rather tell them about, whatever you think is relevant about yourself professionally. Another question that you may want to prepare in advance is, why do you want to work here? So that's when your research will come in handy that you've done in advance so that you can echo back to them things that you know about their organization, about their patient population, about their values and their mission. And whatever of those things aligns with your personal and professional missions, that's what you want to talk about. You want to say how you see yourself fit in because of what you see in them as an employer that is attractive to you. The other major set of questions that I recommend having an answer to are those situational questions. So those are the questions that start with, tell me about a time when, ... So usually those questions are, tell me about a time when you experienced conflict and how did you handle it? Tell me about a time when you were recognized for doing something well. Tell me about a time when there was an ethical dilemma in your workplace. Tell me about a time where you had a disagreement with a patient or a provider or a colleague, that type of thing. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated teamwork. These are all situational type questions that will come up often. So my best recommendation is to remember 1 or 2 patient scenarios and kind of go over them in your head and tuck them in your back pocket. And you can think of maybe a patient scenario that was medically complex, ethically complex, behaviorally complex. And with any luck, you'll have one or two that check all those boxes so that you can remember just one or two patient scenarios, and then you'll be able to answer those questions on the fly because you'll know those scenarios inside and out. This is also the type of situation where it's okay to take a little bit of storytelling liberties. Now, I'm not at all saying to fabricate or lie, but let's say there were two very similar patient scenarios that answer one question. You could weave that into your storytelling without kind of differentiating the two, if that makes sense. Because the important thing here is not necessarily like an accurate timeline of events. This isn't like a quality assurance review or anything. This is an opportunity for you to tell a story about something that you did well, or some sort of challenge that you faced and a problem that you solved. And sometimes it can be helpful and supportive of your storytelling to pick from two different scenarios. So something else that you will notice that's different from nursing positions is that you will likely interview with more people than you thought you would. So you might interview with someone from administration or a practice manager or a chief nursing executive, but you may also interview with someone like a medical director who's a physician, or another nurse practitioner or PA who's the lead in your clinic, or would just be, a colleague. So remember that these are different people that you're interviewing with whose names you'll want to remember, and you may have different questions for each type of person. So, someone who's in the executive level, you may have more questions about the organization as a whole and their mission and how you fit in. Whereas if you're interviewing with someone who would potentially be your peer, you could ask about, whether he or she feels supported by working here. And you can ask more questions about what it's like to be an employee. And then someone mid-range, like the medical director, you might ask questions like, how does this clinic or hospital or organization support the success of new employees? Or tell me about the orientation process here and how long would I expect to be on orientation? So make sure you have a list of these questions that you plan to ask them. And I definitely recommend writing them down and keeping them with you in like a little Padfolio so that you can remember to ask them. Because I don't know about you, but as soon as someone says, do you have any questions? All the questions I have they go out of my brain. This happens to me in interviews. This happens to me at my own doctor's office. Like, I got to write things down or else I won't remember. Maybe that's mom brain. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old. So the other thing, you want to bring with you some copies of your resume because, like I said, you're going to be interviewing with multiple people who may not have all gotten the email. They may not have printed out your resume. The printer may be out of paper, whatever. Make sure you come with like 3 extra copies. You may not need them, but you'll have them just in case. And the other reason to remember the names of everybody is that you may decide to send a thank you note or a thank you email afterwards. If you get any business cards that have people's emails on them, go ahead and send them a thank you note after the fact, letting them know how much you enjoyed your time with them and how you see yourself as a potential value and asset to their organization, if it's true. If you're not too jazzed about the interview and you're not interested in an offer, it's polite to send a thank you note, but it's not necessary. Now, there are some additional questions, some of which could happen in subsequent interviews, but if the topics come up, a few additional things that I think are important to clarify. First of all would be, who is your employer, or who would be your employer? Something that's very different with NP practice from nursing practice is that in some scenarios, you might work for a hospital, but not actually be employed by the hospital. You might be employed by a private group, like a physician group that's contracted with the hospital. So you'd actually be employed by a particular group, but then you'd have privileges and you'd work physically at the hospital. So understanding that structure is important just to know who the actual employer would be. And along those same lines, Hopefully you would know this from the job posting, but you would want to know whether this is an employed position or an independent contractor position. So independent contractor position means a 1099. So that means that they don't withhold your state taxes and you aren't eligible for benefits, that type of thing. But then if you are an actual employee, then differentiating whether you're full-time, part-time, or per diem will help you figure out what benefits you're eligible for. I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but you will want to know, and this may be one of the most important questions, you want to know how this organization supports new nurse practitioners or supports nurse practitioners in general. You'll want to know what type of mentorship they have set up to ensure your success and what their orientation process looks like and who you will be orienting with. Will it be with a nurse practitioner like yourself? Will it be with a physician? You'll want to know exactly who will be training you. And then another thing to touch on would be the conditions of your employment. If you are employed, is it a contract employment or is it an at-will employment? Will you be getting an actual contract that requires, pages and pages of review and signatures, or will this be more of an offer letter and then your employment is at the liberty of the organization's employee handbook? Those are the two main ways that employed nurse practitioners are offered positions, and you'll want to clarify which you are dealing with. We'll talk more about contracts in a different video, but you will want to know which you are dealing with so that you know how to review that offer when you receive it. So those are my basic interview recommendations and tips for new or seasoned nurse practitioners. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to this channel, and maybe even share this video with a nurse practitioner friend, colleague, or classmate so that together we can make this overwhelming transition a little bit easier for all nurse practitioners. And don't forget to go to my website, theresumérx.com. You can grab your free new nurse practitioner guide and get on my email list so that you are one of the first to know about my new programs, videos, blog posts, all the good stuff that I put out. I want you to be the first to know, and the people who are the first are the ones on my email list. So I hope to see you there. And until next time, remember, I am always rooting for you, and I will see you soon.